Hello, I'm Daniel Antos. I'm a staff backend engineer at Hybo. Today's talk is about collaborating and talking about architecture. And the most important part of this talk is that you should take some time and explore, invest in how to talk within your team, how to express your ideas, to take your team on the journey from the very beginning, and to express some of that architectural ideas that you explore in Go code. So let's go. We will be talking about, first of all, why you should care about this. Then we're gonna talk about some of the good ways and bad ways to approach it, most of them from my experience. And then we're gonna do a little live coding example of how we can express architectural ideas in Go. So first of all, why? Of course, if you have more people in a room, you can get to better ideas. More people clashing, more people talking, exploring will yield better ideas. Doesn't matter how experienced you are, even a junior developer in your team can come up with a really, really good idea that you just maybe did not come up with because you were not on the ground in that project. Some techniques also allow us to do deeper thinking. They allow us to take a breath when it's necessary, take some time to think in different ways, explore different venues. And last, but definitely not least, doesn't matter how good of an idea we have, how good of an architecture we can come up with. At the end of the day, if everyone in our team, in our organization, is not rowing to the same destination, that everyone doesn't understand, doesn't know where we're going, we're not going to get there. Doesn't matter how good of an idea of an architecture we have. Let's explore some of the ways that at least I failed, and I assume every senior developer here as well. And as we go through those examples, remember that, at least from my point of view, I really appreciate everyone who contributes to the discussion, even if they don't do it in the way that I think is the best. I always approach this with compassion, that it is better than inactivity. And all of this usually comes from a good place. And all of those I did, and well, hopefully I learned from those. So, first one, large pull request. As you can see, I had a database model for one of the features, 120 comments. That probably delayed the project by like 2 weeks. None of us were happy. My product manager, engineering manager, no one in the team. It was insane. And why this happens? I mean, we start working on a feature, right? We see some small architecture thing that we just really wanna dig in, this little small fix, and then we go. And a week later, we end up with like 100 lines change, and we found out that 5 people from our team really hate this idea, and we just lost a week of work. Even worse, this is not an invitation to a conversation about that. You can lose a lot of good ideas once you present your idea with this way. And there is a strong bias when we spend so much time on the code. We really want this to be shipped. Our product manager really wants us to ship it because, yeah, we wasted a week, 2 weeks, maybe more, and fixing that from that point, it's not really fun. Another one, being too excited. This slide had a different name at the beginning. It had do not surprise people with big architectural ideas on a meeting, but accept that not fitting on the slide. The core of that issue was being too excited. And I don't mean that we should not be excited for something, to fix something, to do something, but we have to take a deep breath and think, are we solving the right problem? Is this problem even worth solving? Are we thinking about short-term solution, long-term solution? What's the broader context? How do we communicate that to the team? Because if we come out with the large pull request that I showed you before, like, they're gonna lose so much of the context right away because they see solution, they are already biased. And taking that step back, and we're gonna discuss some of the tools that help doing that, is a lot better way to approach it. Speaking about excitement, nothing sucks more life out of excitement than someone dictating what the architecture should be. Doesn't matter how experienced they are. We already mentioned that more people equals better ideas. Doesn't matter if we have one architect with 50 years of experience. And working like that with an architect going from the ivory tower and dictating what it should be is a great way to lose all of the people that are creative, that are driven, that want to have an impact in a company, to probably our competitors, to be honest. So let's discuss some of the ways that have worked for me. And small caveat, I work in the remote first company, meaning we have no office. We do everything async through Slack, through Notion, through Miro. All of those will work in hybrid environment and in the office, but probably with some tweaks here and there. First one is decision records. This is my favorite one. So decision record is centralized log of all of decisions that we have taken, on we are thinking about taking, on that we have discarded. And each one of those decisions should have a decision record rather early. We're talking about the important decisions, not all of them, right? Like if you have to write one file migration, you'll have to create a decision record for that. But if you're choosing database, if you're choosing maybe language, maybe security measures, you should have a decision record. And each one of those decision records should have context, because in the future you will not remember what you actually, like what you wanted to achieve and what you had at the time. You should have obviously a problem statement, and you should have competing ideas, and then of course proposed idea that hopefully is gonna be implemented at some point. And why it works so nicely is that this is first of all invitation to talk with your team. You have a place where you can share comments, where you can ideate, improve. This is also a great thinking process, because it's a lot easier to go on a meeting and just spit out 15 minutes of words of what we think we should be doing. It's a lot harder to sit down, write it, probably edit it a few times because we don't like what we wrote. Happens to me all the time. And this also gives us that breathing room that I spoke about before. It gives us time to write it down and come back to it the next day, read it again, and maybe decide none of it makes sense, or maybe we're so biased that we are already pitching ideal scenario for a problem that maybe we don't even have. Yeah. Second one is diagrams. I personally was intimidated with diagrams for quite a long time. I don't know why. I kind of felt like there are all of these rules unspoken or spoken with UMLs and the way you actually should be doing diagrams. And it just felt like this barrier. And I probably crossed it a year and a half ago, which is quite late. When we had a principal engineer joining us and kind of show me some of the ropes. But good diagram can show what tens pages of text cannot. And some people also think a lot better with diagrams. Sometimes you can just explain. They have no idea. You show them the diagram and they're like, oh, that's what you meant. And sometimes it's even easier for us to think with diagrams. We kind of write something, we're not sure, then try to put it on diagram, we're still not sure, but then it clicks, and once you see the boxes align on diagram, it's a great feeling. Proof of concept. You might be thinking, didn't you just say that large pull requests are not a good idea? Yes, but proof of concepts in code, the core change from the large pull request is that this is an invitation to talk about it. It's an invitation to discussion. And you're not attached to it. It's in the name, it's just a proof. You probably, hopefully you're not merging the proof of concepts. You have to tear it down anyway and start from the very beginning, even if you agree that this is a way to go. And that invitation to discussion that we talked about, it's gonna invite other colleagues in your team to do their own thing. Maybe they're gonna leave some comments on your proof of concept, or maybe they're gonna do their own because they wanna go in totally different direction, and that's fine. Few more that I really enjoy, but I don't want to spend the whole slide on those. So showing the journey. Sometimes we forget, especially if we are deep in a problem space, that not everyone understands the pain that we felt or our team felt before. And sometimes going a little bit back and showing all of the scenarios that caused that pain, all of the scenarios that led to some incidents, to notorious bugs. We take it for granted, but people in our team might not know, or people in the other team might not understand why we choose some weird pattern when they like the other one, but like they do not understand the pain. So showing them the journey of how we went there changes quite a lot. Another fun way to kind of approach it is, what's the worst way to solve the problem? Except for it being quite fun to do within a team, you can get some crazy ideas going. At the end, it highlights what we really don't want to implement. You can use that to find the values that you most care about for a given project, for a given architecture, and then from that, build up to what you want it to do. Build up to what's the actually good solution for that problem. And sixth way to approach it, asking yourself or the other person, especially if you feel like you can't find middle ground, like you just talk to the person with arguments and you feel like they just don't get me. What I usually try to do is ask both myself and them at which point you would pick the other solution. Because sometimes if they say never, that discussion probably not going to be too good. And I think we have a next talk that's gonna be talking that all of the patterns have some context in which they work very well. So when you start with asking where would you want to use the other approach, you can find if you agree on the values, and then find that balance of where you are and when they are, and it's a lot easier to compromise. Or maybe you just understand that they really like or value your approach, but they think that it is too complicated, and if we grow 10x, 100x, they would gladly go that way. Now let's go to how to express some of the ideas in code, in Go. And I was a little bored with all of the enterprise examples of shopping carts, tracking system, Jira-like systems, and whatnot. So I thought we're gonna do an architecture for a contract bridge. It's a little game that I've been playing recently. It's a card game. Don't worry, you don't have to know the rules. But the important part is that there are 3 stages to the game. First one is the auction, where players bid and they try to find a contract that they want to play. Then there is actual game, when they try to win the most the amount of tricks that was aligned in the contract. And the third step is actually scoring, meaning you take a contract, you take how many tricks was won, and then you calculate number of points and distribute that to the teams. And let's see if I can share my IDE. We're not going to go too deep if the architectural ideas that I propose here make sense. It's more about expressing them in the code in a way that hopefully the next developer, probably us in the future, understand what author meant. So, first of all, folder structure. You probably already do that quite intuitively, but it is important to think about it. We had 3 stages, so having 3 packages, modules, call them whatever you want, makes sense. I put them in the root of the folder, but that doesn't matter for this. And we have a scoring here, which we're keeping very simple, just to show how the auction module could be used. We found our bids that lay somewhere in the database, hopefully. Then we take a contract, tricks that are won, and then we calculate points. So far, so good. Now, if we want to use domain-driven design or have some kind of layers, you can show that through folder structure. API, domain, infrastructure, you probably see that in a lot of other languages. And let's go to the domain for a second here. Keeping it very simple, we just have a slice of bits, some representation of every bit, and the last bit is a contract. Okay.
Contract being the element from the game, not the contract as an interface.
Okay. Yes, yes. Good point, thank you.
would be great to know the rules of the game first.
So, would you want me to go over again, over the rules?
No, but I basically don't understand the game. But that's right.
Okay. The main part that we're focusing on is about scoring. So we take something from one system, from the other one, and we calculate the points. The business logic of that doesn't really matter for this example. But let's see where we can get with that. So, first part is that I personally like. We take any bid as a contract, and we say it's a contract, but doesn't really. Nothing forces the developer to just pass whatever they want. And Go has this nice way, which is called aliasing of types, where we can create a different type based on existing type. And this is just a copy of bid, but if you provide bid to the place where you wanted the contract, the compiler is gonna warn you. It's not hard to change the bid into a contract, but it immediately shows the intent. And I have a very good example that worked in my company. We had employee with our internal ID and tax system ID, right? Both were called employee ID, and it caused a lot of confusion. People would confuse the two quite often in the code, and it would only surface in functional review because both of them were string. So what we did is we just created types for both of them. They were not something sophisticated. They were just like contract. They were type, tax system ID, and they were just a string. But whenever you would pass the wrong one by mistake, the compiler would warn you. But let's go back to the example here. So we created the contract type. We have to fix our calculation of points, and it's getting better because now we can be a little bit more explicit. Now we know, looking at the calculating points, that we don't take any bit. We don't have to trust the name of the variable. You can see by the type that we want something very specific. Now let's take a look at the repository part. Using repository of another module, we're in scoring module and we're using the repository of auction module. It gets the job done, but using the implementation details of another module causes a lot of pain. I know because I did that way too many times. And you can of course tell people not to do it, but you know, when it's sun outside, barbecue season, your friends invited you to a barbecue at 5 p.m. and you had a deadline for today to ship the code. I'm probably the one that's shipping the code if that's what's gonna get me to the barbecue. So we shipped that. We of course left nice to do, which we all know is not getting solved until some problem arises. And let's assume that some problem did arise, but we don't really know what happened. So being a little better this time, we decide that we wanna give some logs to this, and we're gonna do it properly. We're gonna do a decorator pattern because today maybe we wanna just add some logs. But in future, maybe you want to add some metrics, maybe you want to add some tracing. So let's write it. We need an interface, of course, to be able to wrap repository. We already have implementation, and the interface matches it, and we need some kind of something that's gonna log. So logs is a decorator that takes in any implementation of our repository, so that we can add more decorators in the future. Very small log, and we have to call the inner repository. Does it implement it? Okay. If you know decorator pattern, maybe that's gonna be easy, but not really. Probably if this grows quite a lot, it's quite easy to lose whatever the intention of author was. And another part is now we have to go through all of the implementation of that, all of the initializations of that, and we have to update them. I broke something. Type interface find. Isn't my IDE just malfunctioning after update? It's weird. It does say it, but it doesn't.
Maybe it's just
Yeah, I think
refresh
it.
or something.
The joy of live coding when stuff usually goes wrong. Oh, and now I broke sharing as well. It's even better. Let's try again.
Increase the font or is it?
Still indexing.
Okay. Well, anyway. Hopefully the highlighting syntax is gonna come back to us once it revalidates the cache. But you have to go through all of the initializations of repository and fix that. And everyone outside doesn't really care that we have decorators there. So what we can do,
We could use in there because we'll
On-size reduction actually removes the errors.
Sorry?
Because you can see them.
Out
I
of
think-
sight, out of mind.
Yeah, so you can initialize it here with a constructor and
I think we're not seeing anything here on
Yeah.
the
Oh.
screen, like nothing moves.
Just
and,
increase the font size.
no, I already did that. So it kind of-
because it changed.
Yeah,
now
sorry.
Now the font is very small. Oh, but
Yes.
Yeah.
that's better. Yeah.
That's what I was saying, so I was a bit confused. So, and highlighting is back, so we're good. So, instead of, let's go back here. Instead of now fixing all of those, what we can do is we can limit to what we want it to be exposed. So instead of returning so we return an interface, which allows us to have a control over what we actually wanna give back to, meaning now this is going to be the only place that can create this. We can make those private because first fix this. We can now make all of those private because no one outside should care and everyone should be using our new method. The intention is clear here. If you've ever seen the creator pattern and you're gonna see new return logs that takes in the repo, and maybe in the future it's gonna be wrapped in under tracing metric, you're gonna see it here as well. And everyone who instantiates it can see only two things that we wanna show them, which is new and the interface. They don't have to care about all of the details. But there is still another issue. Even though we fixed that, the repository itself, I personally don't believe it should be used outside of the module. It should be internal. And there is a pattern in, there is a way in Go to hide it entirely. There is internal folder. Whenever you put anything to internal folder, only its parent and everything within that parent can use it. So now that we moved the infrastructure repo to internal, only API, domain, and auction itself can use it. And we can see that compiler is unhappy with our usage of infrastructure within a scoring. Our intention is clear. We don't want it to be used outside. So what we can do, instead of allowing you to take whatever you want from repository, we can have separate way of accessing that. Whatever you call it, it's fine. I'm gonna use API here. And API has, because it's in auction, it has no issue in accessing the repository, and we can limit what we show outside. So one of the issues of allowing someone else to access your repository is that they can take something out, they can modify, and then they can save it. So if you put a lot of effort in your manager to make sure that you don't have race condition, someone can just break it by using another repository another manager that completely breaks all of your effort put into that. Let's update this. So we don't really need bits anymore. Oh, of course. Some people like to go even further, and instead of using microservices, they wanna do something what's called module monolith, meaning they want to have very strict control of what goes out of your module. And they put domain inside of internals as well, because they don't believe you should be able to touch this at all. But this provides us with a small issue, because we kind of wanted to use that contract in calculate points, and now that we moved it inside of internal, it's not really possible. We have to go to our API, and we would have to probably copy the entire contract. But in Go, we can use alias as well, but we can use something that's, I think it's called type assigning. Nice. And instead of just aliasing, we assign to our contract domain contract. And this means that these are treated the same, but because domain is internal, it can be accessed, but this is in our API, so it can be. So we can continue using our contract type without too much of a boilerplate, just one line. And I've seen it used in quite a lot of libraries recently. This is quite an interesting way to get away with breaking changes, because you can implement everything you want in internal folder, and then only expose what you feel comfortable that it's not gonna break outside. So, for example, if you have quite a complicated package and you wanna structure it in multiple packages, in multiple folders, you would have to play around with something being private, but maybe you want it to be accessed somewhere else. But you can get around with it by just putting everything internal and then being very explicit what you want to expose outside of it by doing something similar like we did here, where we specify API that we want someone to be able to use, and then have all of the types that we know or we hope that they're not going to break anytime soon. Yes, and that was all that I wanted to show in the live coding example. Any questions to that part before I change sharing again to presentation?
What's the main difference between type assigning and aliasing?
Yes, so if you create an alias, they're not equal, meaning if you return, if you change this to contract A, it's gonna complain that this is not what is expected. The equal sign means that they're basically the same, it's just a different way to reference it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, back to the sharing. Yeah. And so I want to give a quick summary of what we talk about. First one, don't do it alone. Don't do architecture alone. Find a way to collaborate find a way to collaborate with our team. Put your time into investigating, exploring what works for all of them, including you. Have in mind that the best architecture doesn't really matter if you don't have buy-in from your team. You're gonna come from holidays and they're gonna go the complete opposite if you're not on the same page. At least with agree to disagree. And don't forget to express some of your intention that you put quite a lot of effort into diagrams, decision records, POCs, into the resulting code that kind of shows how you wanted it to go, to make it easy to do the right things and make it hard to make the wrong things. And please don't do it all. So that's it. Thank you. Do we have time for questions?
Yes, sure.
So let's have some questions. And Noble9 has present. So the first person that asks a nice question is gonna and break the silence.
Has to be nice.
Is gonna win it.
This guy already has.
Second now.
I was about to ask about your, you showed like ADRs. Do you use a specific tool to track those ADRs? Because you showed us some nice table with some statuses and everything. And is there some third-party tool which supports it out of the box, or was it something you created entirely?
Okay, so the question is about what tool I'm using for decision records or architectural decision records. We call them decision records because we use them for more than just architecture. I'm using Notion because we have all of our knowledge base inside of the Notion. But really anything works. Notion is just nice in a way that everyone in our company has access to it, and you can create templates and tables like you've seen and provide that to all of the developers.
Yeah, because we've been trying using like Confluence and that stuff, and it's terrible.
Yeah, I've seen also people trying Google Docs, and yeah, I recommend Notion, but you need an organization buy-in because it's better to just use the tool that everyone has access to rather than try to own something on your own. So yes, here you go.
Okay. I see some swag.
Yes.
Do you actually share your rules of engagement, or basically? I'm wondering if you share something with your team to structure your meeting about architecture, if everyone is on the same page that you are.
So this is where I really like decision records. I believe in written way of providing knowledge because you have to put more time to write something, to edit it, to make it nice. Maybe you're gonna enrich it with POCs and diagrams. Then I send it to team so they can take their time to actually explore the idea and maybe fiddle with things on their side. And only then we jump on a meeting to kind of like, unless everyone is like, yeah, let's go with this, then of course meeting doesn't matter. But we kind of start from there and give everyone some time to understand the problem space.
Okay, but I was more wondering about particular, you get reasons to actually that kind of ideas that you should think about the worst solution. Do you actually coach your team to think like that, or this is only for you? I'm just thinking that because I'm wondering how you pass it to the team, because from this presentation you are focusing to to be on the same page like the other team members. Do you actually coach your team?
If I understand correctly, you want to know how I actually make sure that everyone in team uses the same tools of finding biases and setting problems. I try to. I don't know if you can call it coaching, but because of my role, I am a person who advises them. So I try to let them do their thing and see where they go. And depending on what I miss, then I'm gonna go to them and tell them what I think they're missing. So for example, common mistake, that's I also have to remember for myself, is kind of jumping to solution. It's very common where you create a decision record, and maybe even when you write the context, you already are describing the problem you wanna solve. So it kind of comes from the experience, but first of all, I always want there to be good opposing ideas, because usually it's not as easy as there's one very good solution, and everything else, you know, is kind of like a dummy solution that you say, oh, there's this thing, but it's bad because, I don't know, it's slow, and you just discard it. Or maybe sometimes people don't even include the opposing solutions. They just start decision record, and they just have main solution that's clearly a bias, and then I'm gonna go to them and I suggest, hey, maybe you can add it, and that's the place where I'm gonna suggest, hey, maybe we can schedule a meeting when we're gonna find more ideas through, for example, showing the journey or showing or looking for the worst solution.
Okay.
There is a book, I have not finished it yet, but I'm still gonna recommend it. It's called Creative Thinking. You can kind of go into that, and they have a little bit more ideas that show how you can get out of the box to look at the problem from different perspectives.
Okay, but to summarize, you are more like observing the interactions between the team members and not being too rigid.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I believe in that kind of relationship with my team.
Yeah.
I mean, well, basically when I hear something like that, okay, well, it sounds really great, and that's perfect, okay, and that's the moment when I'm getting suspicious. I mean, usually when I hear like, oh yes, well, more people, better ideas, you know, everything is splendid, you know, let's discuss, let's burst with joy, okay, and that's the moment when I'm getting really, really suspicious, okay, because you said, like, when you were talking about this ivory tablets, like, you know, more people, better ideas. I wouldn't say so. Quantity does not mean quality, okay? That's the very rule of the game. Okay, so when you're saying like more people, more discussion, better ideas, yeah, it sounds great, okay? Well, it's really encouraging, okay? Well, you know, crowd cheering, Amway selling and stuff, okay? That's great. But at the end of the day, okay, if you think about it deeply, well, it's like, it doesn't work this way. I mean, not always, always. It's like, okay, you have more people, okay, you try to please more people, and quite often you're not really selecting the best possible solution, okay, because quite often the best possible solution is that, well, the voice of the minority, okay, well, the voice of, well, few people that actually see some patterns that are actually valid. And quite often when you're trying to please all the people, okay, you're starting the discussion, a discussion with like trying to please everyone, and you're ending up with some sort of like, I don't know, middle ground, okay, that is like, well, so good for everybody, okay, and at the end of the day, you may end up with this like a, well, genug mit plus approach, okay, and that's what I'm afraid. I mean, in general, you know, all the stuff you're saying, in my humble opinion, right, okay, it sounds great, okay, it's like encouraging and so on, but in practice, I'm really afraid that it may not be like that. I mean, the good thing is like, at the end of the day, when you said, well, that you're trying to mentor those people and so on, so it's not like, well, total democracy, like a democratic chaos, okay, you're just trying to please everybody, but there is this like a mentor, okay, yes, we are equal, but I'm primus inter pares, and that's sort of alright. I don't want to sound authoritarian, or like, you know, but I believe that, I really deeply believe, okay, that, well, there must be some sort of a middle ground, okay, and so, you know, just clapping hands, that everything is like great, and we discuss more. Okay, well, we can't end with like endless strong meetings, discussions, crowd cheering, dancing, clapping hands, and so on, and go nowhere. Basically. Now, also the stuff about those like proof of concept stuff and so on. Well, every proof of concept has the inertia, has the way. Okay, you're going in some sort of direction. Okay, after 2 weeks of like proof of concept, you end up well just going for the sake of going because you already started, and when you focus on something, you tend to think it's more important than it was before. So, like, I mean, I like it, but I'm like skeptical and like, you know, a bit scared.
It's a very good point, very good point. I actually had a slide, but I cut it out for time reasons. Around democratic voice, that's the first kind of issue you mentioned. Yeah, I don't think it's, you know, like you have 5 people in a team and then we vote which idea we're
But maybe
going to
not
go.
like that. I mean, it's like, well, that was the moment when, you know, the many people, I mean, there were many Nazis, okay, and they actually democratically elected one guy, and, you know, we know how it ended up, okay, that is pretty bad. So, yeah.
Yeah, that of course there is some stopping point. If you have two people, two parts of a team battling around which idea is better, I believe that you should have someone with authority to step in and say we go one way or the other. And if you say that before, the teams will quite often, knowing that we're gonna go one way or the other, they're gonna try to find more of the common ground, or like, okay, we can sacrifice this, but can you please sacrifice that? So we meet somewhere in the middle, and this is where we go. Is the middle the best approach? It depends, of course, but I'll give you this. I was on a project where, to this day, I think I had great idea, I scoped it very well, and I forced people to go this way, and they just did not, at the end of the day, they did not understand why and what we were doing. And you can say that it's my failure of not explaining it well, but maybe some of my ideas were just like not, too complicated. So even though maybe I was the most experienced person in the room and I said what we're gonna do, we ended up with quite a shitty code because no one understood what they were doing in there. I was going there and fixing it every week to kind of bring everyone back to where I think we should be. But that's not the way to work with a team.
Issue is not an excuse, I think, for like sacrificing quality.
But what do you mean by sacrificing quality?
Basically, you got an idea, okay, and you find that work was great, and sort of all up, okay, and then you got the team, okay, and due to the skill issue, okay, it was really hard to explain to people the value of the quality you were to provide. And at the end of the day, you have to sacrifice the quality and provide like a worse solution because people were not able to follow. So the question is like, okay, we do understand why, okay, that's the very pragmatic practical solution, okay. But still, is it good when it comes to the overall performance quality and the value provided?
After we fixed that, company was earning more money, developers were happier, they were learning. So in my opinion, it was better, even though, code quality is quite a subjective term, and at the end of the day, we're making a business, right? Usually. So depending how you value that, I would say that in that particular case, yes, sacrificing and doing the worst code quality was better for the company and for the business and for customers.
Whatever works.
It's kind of going to the other extreme though, right?
It's a game of games. How many risks are you producing?
No,
but
don't get me wrong. It's not like I disagree, right? I mean, but I just wanted to avoid this like crowd thinking bias. Okay? And I hear something nice, and I will automatically follow. Okay?
Yeah.
That's great. So
And
it's like,
don't get me wrong. What I showed you, it's easy to show. Hey, we did decision records and everything is great. Like, it's a lot of work. We make mistakes all of the time, but it's about finding some way that maybe you make your team 10% more efficient, because you don't have new joiner coming in and asking about why did you do it this way, that sucks, and then you can show them the decision record that shows the context. And maybe you have new idea, a new problem that you have to solve, and by including, that actually happened 3 months ago. I was battling with another very senior engineer about the right solution, and we had junior developer coming, and after 30 minutes of listening to us, bickering on a call, he asked, how are you gonna do X with the one or the other approach? And both of us went like, okay, we have to rethink and find a third solution now. And so it's kind of hard to be like, okay, like someone is experienced, and just because someone is experienced doesn't know that then they have all of the answers. I would not allow that given developer to dictate all of the project, but because he had space to say what he thinks, to listen, and to express himself, we ended up being a lot better, because we probably would have found out what he said probably month in within a project. But thank you for battling with him. No, it's fine. Okay, continue.
What I think you're arguing about is that it's not necessarily the more people the better, but just don't make decisions on your own. Run your ideas through at least few people, or at best the people who are going to be working with you on the solution. Because everyone can generate something useful. It's still up to the structure of responsibility in the organization whether you're going to use those suggestions and implement them, but it's still good to talk about these things.
With this other approach, you give them like the one decision maker. How could you potentially know that well, actually the person is right? So then you're getting into like the other extreme that well, there is a bias. Okay, the person is actually making mistake, and then you find yourself trying to conquer Moscow. Okay, and that's actually the bad idea. So that's yet another point. Okay, well, democratic approach may actually take ages to just go into decision. On the other hand, well, you never know if the lead developer is actually right or just will hallucinate.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily the democratic decision. It's not a democratic process. You just share ideas. You just discuss it. You just confront your ideas, and you try. Well, when you say you try to find middle ground, you try to confront the ideas and get something of it, get some conclusions. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily about democratic process.
I mean,
It's
actually
just
the
about- it's just
discussion
about- it's
is
just
the
about-
very definition of democracy, just coming together to the conclusion.
Yeah,
think
but there's always a case where I don't know, like two senior developers decide that they will make the conclusions and they will follow this particular idea, and they gathered some ideas.
All
for
right. So
discussion.
before you make the decision, okay, even if you have like a few decision makers, okay, there's a board, let's say, okay, then people discuss, you listen to them, and just try to make like a more informed decision.
Yeah,
Reasonable.
yeah, but that's what I would take from this talk actually.
Yeah. Okay. If that's the case, I mean.
Well, it's all about allowing the people to contribute to the project,
And I think that ownership is also like I also worked in a project when like there was like statement from the architect without consulting the others, and yeah, there was a problem that people didn't really feel about these rules, and those rules were enigmatic, and yeah, it in many PRs we had like issues that those rules kind of wasn't followed. And I think that discussing about these things can lead to like better understanding and making things on like better ownership of those rules. So I would say that it's good to discuss.
Okay, so maybe I have a proposal because the pizza arrived already. So maybe we can continue the discussion in the kitchen. What do you think?
Yeah.
Thank you, Darius.